On this episode of the Layover Live, Benny Anderson with Visit Eau Claire stops by to talk Facebook ads and road trips. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 145 of the Layover Live, where we bring you the top article from the Layover each week. I'm Jason Swick, VP of Strategy and Insights at SimpleView. And before we get started today, I just want to welcome everybody back from the Thanksgiving break. I really hope that you guys had a chance, like I did, to spend some time with family and friends safely, of course. It was nice to get a few extra days off. So this week, I'm joined on the show by a really, really special guest, Mr. Benny Anderson, who's the Interim Executive Director for Visit Eau Claire. So, Benny, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Jason.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to finally get you on. I know Katie and I have been talking about this for a while. You guys always do really, really good stuff up there in Eau Claire. But for those out there that maybe don't know you, Benny, maybe just a little background on yourself and where you came from.
Yeah, I am originally from a little town called New Richmond, Wisconsin, which is about an hour from Eau Claire. I came here for college and worked in the entertainment field for, probably 20-some years now, between movie theaters and an arcade and family entertainment center, a water park, a resort, and then took this job as the interim executive director after serving on the board for, I think it's about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I joined this job on March 1st, about 2 weeks before that little safer at home thing. If you remember that time, tourism was beautiful. I mean, we had events, restaurants were open, it was great. And then 2 weeks later, I mean, I don't know what happened, but a lot of people are saying this might be my fault.
I'm looking for someone to blame, man. So if you want to take it, I'll definitely do that. But yeah, tough way to start, right? But again, no stranger to the tourism side of the fence, man. So super happy to have you on. Now, this week, our article of the week comes from socialmediatoday.com, and it's a really good infographic which talks about 10 Facebook trends that you need to know for 2021. And as 2021 at the end of the year is really, really coming up really, really quickly, we thought this would be a really good one to feature as we're kind of slowly starting to plan for whatever next year and beyond looks like. Now, throughout the pandemic, we've done a pretty good job, I think, of showcasing dozens of DMOs who have been reaching their audiences through creative ideas across search and through email and all kinds of other forms of paid media. But social media has also been one of those channels that's done an unbelievable job of allowing us to be able to reach our potential audience. And one DMO out there who's done an unbelievably amazing job and has always done a pretty good job with leveraging social media as well as Facebook ads, which we'll get into in a little bit, is the team at Eau Claire. And so, Benny, I want to jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about your road trip campaign, which will kind of lead us into the Facebook stuff a little bit as we start to talk about this. But maybe talk about that and how your team came up with that concept and maybe how that's changed or shifted from years past.
So like any of the good marketing ideas at Eau Claire, I mean, it really starts, with an idea, which this time just happened to be mine, but not often is. And then it gets kicked to my amazing marketing team, Kenzie, who's been on the team for forever. And then Michaela, who's our photographer and graphic design, and Demi, who made a switch during the pandemic from running our experience center to become our social media and content manager, and has, really had to do a great job. I had this idea many years ago when I was working at a resort, and we were trying to make one-night stays expand. So we wanted to encourage people to have a second or third night stay. And I went back to all the trips that we took as a kid, with my two sisters in the back seat. And it was, sometimes fun and sometimes it was horrible, but it was always broken up by, that mini golf course or that conveniently timed Dairy Queen ice cream break or whatever it was, so that mom and dad could get a break. Me and my sisters could stop arguing or find a game or use the bathroom. And then it was get out of the car and take care of that. So we were really just looking upon those ideas and experiences to figure out how to get people to travel. And it was really, born out of the necessity of, that airplanes aren't, a huge thing right now. We have a local airport that we get some traffic from, but the big ones in Chicago and Minneapolis had really, reduced in traffic. And So for us to be able to target cities with a lower budget, generally in that traffic mode, and get people back on the road where they feel comfortable to go was great. I mean, it was an idea that worked for us to make sure that we were able to get traffic into the area without any of the struggles of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, great stuff. I love this road trip idea. I love how you guys segmented the different audiences. I think that's an awesome idea. Also, hats off to you and your team, because that's a ton of content to produce, but it's really, really good content. And you mentioned, the argument in the back of the seats with the siblings. Sounds like you were in my car growing up, man. That's what we did also too. But hey, listen, those are some of the best memories, right? You think about the times when we took those stops, and we remember those things through our life. So I love that you guys have taken this and kind of looked at it from the traveler's shoes and said, hey, someone coming from this destination, what would they stop and do along the way? Where would this destination do along the way? I think it's really, really good stuff. Now, one thing that I imagine went into this is research and data, right? And with DMOs during this whole pandemic, we've talked a lot about how, research and data has really played a key role into what we're doing. Drive markets are really all that this campaign is really about for you and the team over there, Benny. We've been touting the importance of these drive markets and leveraging them moving forward. So maybe talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, about the research and data that you guys use to plan this particular initiative, right? Going through like maybe Google Analytics or other areas that you guys leverage to help make these decisions.
Yeah, there was a lot of it. I mean, we pretty much used any resource that we could find. The biggest one that drove the decision was that those coronavirus traveler sentiment index reports, from multiple sources, but that Longwoods one has been great. There's a lot of them out there. And what we were quickly seeing, was that, people weren't going to feel comfortable flying very quickly. And as we were watching, some of the webinars on, how to recover from, a 9/11 or 2008's economic impact, and comparing that to these situations, which at the time we didn't anticipate to be as large, but had the same fundamentals, we were quickly seeing that, that data was driving us to move to the road trip model. So after that, we started looking at our Google Analytics and looking at, where the most popular cities were coming from, what were the most popular types of travelers, what could we drive them to while being responsible and safe with it, and then also relying on a lot of that data that we had from the anecdotal experiences. The way that we actually picked the cities that we were looking at on top of the cities that came up in Google Analytics was we picked the highways, and then we picked how we had driven. I'm from close to the Twin Cities, so I knew Highway 94 like the back of my hand. I can tell you where the cops sit. I can tell you where you stop. I can tell you basically every part of that very flat boring drive, but all the really cool places that you could stop to kill some time. Kenzie's from Iowa. We had Demi is from Kenosha, and we've all been to Duluth and Rochester and all these places on these different trips. So we just compiled that into saying, this is what we'd like to do, and here's the data that supports our argument for it. And then we came to SimpleView with it and said, here's what we need to know from previous campaigns that we've run. Here's what we need to know from our SEO reports, and tell us the best way that you guys think that we should do that. And after, it didn't take long for it to come together, but there was a lot of data and content to be pulled to do that. That road trip to Chicago and back was, 2 days in itself of getting content for the marketing team. So,
wow. Yeah. So a lot, and you actually make a good point that I think is worth mentioning. How you talk about, it's not just about getting some of that of the pure analytics data that we always get from Google Analytics and other resources, places like Longwoods and Destination Analyst, which you mentioned, but also then tapping our staff and stuff too for those there was experience that they've had. Hey, what have you gone through growing up? You talked about your experience growing up. Hey, I knew this highway like the back of my hand. So it's leveraging data and research from those resources too, right? Sometimes those are the best resources that either the data can't show you or complement some of your findings from the data. So I appreciate you sharing that too, because I think that's something worth mentioning, is the fact that oftentimes there's people that are on our teams that we could talk to that have had great experiences that could help inform some of these campaigns as well. So then, leading on to all that then is what does success look like? So you talked about the road trip campaigns, some of the research and data that you guys use. So maybe talk a little bit about how you guys measure success. What KPIs we're using. We're using some of the same stuff from before, or were you guys using new ways to measure success? So maybe give us a little insight into that.
Yeah, so just like everything in this year, I mean, you have to go back to the drawing board for how you're measuring success. I run a digital marketing company on the side with my wife, and we're very familiar in the KPIs of clicks and cost per click and click through rates and impressions and all of it. I mean, I can look at those reports and immediately say, oh well, that's working or it's not. You know what I mean for it. But in this world, I mean, we went from a summer that was supposed to be completely sold out for it, and now we're for where we typically wouldn't have to market much. Those events kind of handle themselves. We market to the restaurants, we market to the shoulder parts of it, for it. But now we're marketing a whole summer without some of our best events and resources to do that. And so as we looked at it, we said, okay, well, the biggest KPI for us in the pandemic is, how do our partners feel about how we're marketing right now? How does our community feel about how we're marketing right now? Because, I mean, it's been said on multiple of your programs that, that travel is at the benefit of the resident, and that's horribly butchered and paraphrased, but I hope you know what I'm going for.
Yes, absolutely.
Where what's the point of bringing in all this stuff if it's a down for the residents? They don't like living here because of it. So as we were looking at this stuff and being, a long-term, participant in the restaurant and hotel world, and having so many friends and family that, are still in that, it was hard to just say, well, let's blow this up. I mean, so as we worked with our task force, which has the health department and everything on it, we decided that the KPI had to be, responsible marketing, first. So we waited to press play on this campaign for about 2 months. Before we felt comfortable saying, okay, it's safe the numbers are low enough that we feel safe to bring people back in the fashion that we're trying to do. We're going to keep an eye on it, and then we're going to go from there. And then past that, the hotels had to staff it and figure all of that out. And so we paid attention with that direct help from them of how they were doing and what their situations looked like. And then after that, we went to the traditional KPIs, and honestly, that was the easy part. I mean, for us, the click-through rate, of over 2.6. I mean, on average, an 18 cents cost per click, and I mean, hundreds of thousands of impressions and 15,000 clicks to it. I mean, those are good numbers outside of a COVID for what we were spending, and we were ecstatic with it. But we were happiest that we were able to do it in a fashion that made sense and was safe for everybody.
Yeah, you bring up some really good points there about the community. And yeah, we have shared that a lot about how, our residents and the traveler and us, it's this symbiotic relationship between all of us, right? And we have to keep that in mind. And that's one thing that is absolutely going to change, as we move forward through all of this, which is really good stuff. Now, you talked about, reaching that right audience then, right? And one of the best places to reach that audience, as you are very familiar with, is Facebook, right? It is a fantastic platform for reaching audiences in very meaningful ways when done effectively. So maybe let's dig deeper into that a little bit and how you guys leverage Facebook for part of this initiative. How has the platform then allow you to reach your target audience maybe differently than some of the other channels out there?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Facebook is just one of the most dynamic marketing tools that's out there. I mean, between those and Google, I mean, the way that you can audience target is just ridiculous. So I mean, it used to be that you would cherry pick a little bit more. Oh, I'm going to target to people who make this much money or own a house or whatever. But the nice part about travel is everybody needs to get out. They need to do something, and cities like ours have that ability for everybody to do that. And when we were going to do this, what we were doing is we were taking the first audience is the geographical. You're taking the cities that we want to be in with the high targets that it makes sense for them to travel to 3 to 4 hours away from car, and go from there. And so, that was 7 to 8 cities, and we expanded it a little bit, but it was, basically the Twin Cities, Rochester, all of it. Inside of there, then we took, the people that were already engaged in trying to travel. So people who are looking for fun things to do, restaurants, whatever, they're looking at Eau Claire, they're looking at, any other cities that are in travel, but they're doing it from their cities. And then we went after our traditional, personas that we're good with: families, art lovers, music scene, restaurant, travelers, all of it, or anybody who's just nice enough to search for the terms, want to travel, fun things to do. We don't go by, age block or anything for much of it. Obviously, on breweries and all that, you're above 21 and all that, but past that, travel is the great equalizer, and it's also the great educator. That will be the thing that erases a lot of our social problems, is that as people get around and see the world, they're going to experience more walks of life and different things, and figure out that, the world looks good to everybody all around if we figure it out.
Yeah, no, really good stuff there, Benny. It's, good points. I think, again, you mentioned it, Facebook, Google, probably the place where people are spending most eyeballs still. There's pockets of opportunity in other platforms, but again, those are two powerful tools that are out there. Facebook has a world of targeting options, which oftentimes we scratch the surface on. But if you really want to dig down and really find that specific audience outside of geos and everything else, with psychographic data, job titles, a million other things you could do, it's a super, super powerful platform. And you guys have done a phenomenal job of leveraging that.
And right now is the time to do it. The biggest thing that we saw in that campaign was, we walked in with these, budgets that we hadn't been running, recently for those types of campaigns, started them up during the pandemic, and, went out with it of, oh my gosh, we're going to have to spend so much money to do this. And we were setting, $5,000 to $6,000 budgets a month, to start with. Right. And right now there's not as much competition out there. There's not as much search volume, all of it. So you have this unique window of opportunity to learn, all of that with there, and not have to, to spend competitively to do so, and that was the beautiful part of it for us, is we went in with a 5 to 6 month, budget. And because we couldn't hit search volumes, the cost went down on the traveler coming to us, where we would typically have spent 2 to 3 times more on that cost per click. But also we were able to extend that budget out because we had gotten way more travelers than we expected at a lower cost. And so we ended up getting about 2 to 3 months more out of this marketing campaign than we expected.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it's worth mentioning again. I love your point about it's, because of the pullback, unfortunately, in travel dollars and other marketing dollars, it presented some opportunities for those who were still marketing to get it at a reduced cost. And I think that's something worth mentioning, and a really, really good tip there, as people are just starting to turn those paid faucets back on, and we're turning them on in different ways. Across different destinations. So maybe in wrapping things up, Benny, maybe lastly, what advice do you have for marketers out there? I know we've asked this to everyone we've had on the show, and I would love to hear your insights as well. Maybe some advice you have for some of your fellow destination marketers out there, or any tips that you want to share. You've already shared some really, really good advice throughout this, but maybe any other insights you want to pass along to your fellow marketers out there.
I guess the biggest piece of advice that I have for people is don't be afraid to try it, and don't be afraid to fail. I actually got into Google AdWords and Facebook marketing over 10 years ago at an independent resort. And it was because we had hired a third party, and they had, at the time it was brand new. We spent $100,000 with them, and they got us 1,000 clicks. And my boss turned to me and said, well, do you want to try and figure this out? And I said, sure. He said, well, you can't screw it up any worse. And that was all the reassurance I needed. And after years of, going out and teaching myself a lot of it, but then finding resources as they've developed from Google, from Facebook, from other people, I would say that in the age of information, you're only ignorant if you choose to do so. You can go find all of this information, through reasonable third-party vendors like yourself. You guys have been very fair and very, very great in your stuff from that. And that comes from a guy who does that, in this world. And then also, on top of that, don't be afraid to reach out to your partner DMOs. I'm brand new to this job. I was on the board for 10 years, but I took this job 2 weeks before the pandemic, and I've been able to reach out to the other CVBs. I've been able to reach out to the good folks at Simpleview and a lot of other partners, and to reach out to, the organizations, that are in the industry like this, with WHLAs and all of those, and just find resources from all the different things that we want to do. And by that account, then that also means that, my email and my cell phone are open to you. I'm happy to walk anybody through what we've done and how we do it, and what's worked for us, and better for all of you, what hasn't worked for us, so that we can save you that dollar to recover all this together. This isn't just an Eau Claire thing. We need tourism to go globally. I mean, nationwide would be great, but I mean, so we're happy to help anybody and talk to anybody in that world about what it looks like for us and all of that. And we just hope to pick up an idea to steal from somebody else too.
No, great stuff too. Good advice, wise advice too. Even though you're new to the industry, Benny, it's good stuff. I mean, you're spot on, right? It's leveraging your network. I think that's great advice to give. And then one thing which is always scary for any of us is not being afraid to fail. Try some new things. Boy, if you ever had a time to do that, now would be the time. You've got enough cover with everything that's happening. If you want to try that different idea or whatever you're doing, now would be the time to give that a shot, as you got some cover, right? So great advice. So Benny, thanks for coming on today, man. I really appreciate it. I know we wanted to get you on for a long time, so I'm glad we finally found the time to do it. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me and the opportunity. It's been good talking to you.
Yeah, you bet, buddy. And thanks for tuning in each and every week. If you're not subscribed, please do so now. We're also available on audio podcast through Spotify and iTunes. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.